We have got ourselves a chunky 10-game slate in the association tonight, and here to help all of you make a profitable evening this evening is going to be DraftKings contributor Matt Meiselman. You got Rotowire's Nick Whalen here in the house. Kenny Ducey will be joining us here in just a second. So this segment is called Building Blocks. You guys tell us who your favorite DFS plays are at each position, starting with your favorite play at center. Two dudes, 10 grand or more. You building around one of them, Nick?
I don't know if I am. I think I'm going to look at Domantas Sabonis, who's just below that price point. He's at 9,000 going up against Washington. Had a huge game in the opener against Charlotte. Indiana, of course, ends up blowing that game, but Sabonis was essentially the reason that they built a huge lead early on. He had 20-plus points in the first half alone. Obviously, he's a great rebounder. He's a great passer. He's become a much better three-point shooter. So I think he's a really good value at 9,000. And on the other side of that matchup, if you want to save some money at center, you can get Daniel Gafford at just 5,200. That's a really good price for a starting center. And Montrezl Harrell, who's kind of looking like he's going to be maybe their backup 5, backup 4, played a ton of minutes on opening night. He's at 5,400. So I think there's a lot of options in that Indiana-Washington game.
Okay, Matt, how about you, dude?
Yeah, so I agree with Nick that Sabonis is a good value there. And I think he may be the second most popular center, with Christian Wood down at 7,100 being the guy that most people go to. For me, I think it is worth paying up. And you mentioned two 10K centers. One of them is still questionable for tonight's game. That's Joel Embiid.
That didn't take long, right? Didn't take long for him to land on the injury report.
Yeah, right. A lot of turmoil in Philly at the moment. So, certainly didn't take long. And I think that'll scare some people away. And they may just want to go to Nikola Jokic or someone cheaper. But Embiid is in a great spot against the Nets, who don't have a center who can defend him. Embiid has massive upside against anybody, and I think that the injury type will scare people off. So obviously this is contingent on him actually playing tonight, but if Embiid's out there, I think he winds up being a really contrarian play, and it's not like he's overpriced or anything. 10K is reasonable for Joel Embiid. He could put up 75 fantasy points, so I think he might be the player on this slate who has the most upside. And I think that his ownership winds up really low just because of the injury scare.
Hey, Kenny, for your building block at center, you want to pay up or are you going to save some cash?
Yeah, you want to talk about things that aren't going well right now. You want to talk about upside. I think it's the Chicago Bulls tonight. And I like Nikola Vucevic here at $7,800. Look, he's coming off a 30 BK fantasy point game, but I just think that the price is really good here on Vucevic when you consider the Pelicans just aren't that team that they were a year ago, right? Remember last year, they brought in Steven Adams. They had Zion Williamson. Very physical down low, one of the best rebounding teams in the league. They were the best rebounding team for most of the NBA season. And this is just not the same team. There's been a lot of roster turnover. Obviously, Zion's not playing right now. No Steven Adams. So I think that this is a matchup here I'm not scared of. And to get Vucevic here at $7,800, a very talented offensive player, someone who I think is going to be relied upon a lot in the Chicago Bulls season. Probably going to be a lot of brick threes from Caruso, some more rebounds for Vucevic, and I just think that this is, I don't know, it's a pretty good price for him at this stature at this point of the season. But I don't really disagree with what the other guys are saying.
Nick, take us to forward. Who's your favorite play there?
I'll throw out a few names. I like Michael Porter Jr. going up against San Antonio tonight. 6,300 feels like a really affordable price for him. He was fairly quiet in Denver's opener against Phoenix the other night. Just took 10 shots in 34 minutes. I think he gets going, comes out a little more aggressively tonight. OG Anunoby, 6,200 at Boston. Had a horrific shooting night in their opener against Washington, just 3 of 17 from the field. But I think it's a great sign that he took 17 shots in 34 minutes, still finished with a double-double, still added his usual steals and blocks contributions. I think he's in for a pretty nice bounce back. Some people might have been scared away by that opening night performance. And then if you want to save even more money, I think Lauri Markkanen at 5,200 against Charlotte is a really nice value. I don't necessarily agree with the way that Cleveland is handling this lineup, putting him at small forward. I don't think that's optimal. But he played 31 minutes in the opener, took 14 shots. I thought he looked pretty good. And Cleveland appears committed to just using Kevin Love in like a 15 to 20 minute per game role off the bench. So if that means Markkanen's going to see 30 to 35 minutes on most nights, I think him at 5,200 is going to end up being a really nice value.
Okay, how about you, Matt?
So if Embiid doesn't play tonight, we have Tobias Harris at 7,200, who probably isn't even fadeable, even if every lineup has him. Like, Philly will have virtually no one else to take over their offense, with Ben Simmons also not playing. At that point, though, maybe there are better options just because like he's going to be so popular in that situation. So the thing that I'm looking at, and just across the board, this could be a big factor tonight, is if Embiid's out, the Nets are in so much better of a spot offensively with the Sixers defense taking this massive hit. Embiid's a great offensive player, but he's perhaps even better defensively, especially because of the value he provides protecting the rim. So Kevin Durant is fairly expensive at 9,300. And I think if Embiid's out, people will just play Harris. And then you have Kuzma, Scotty Barnes. There's a bunch of other forwards who are cheap. Nick mentioned Michael Porter Jr. Paying up for Durant, I don't know that too many people get to that. And the Nets are just in such a strong spot if Embiid's out. So it's contingent on that, of course. We don't know if Embiid's going to play at this point. But I really like Durant either way, honestly, but even more so if Embiid's not playing.
Who's your pick at forward, Kenny?
I'm going to go with the guy by the name of LeBron James at $9,100. I know that this is, we're talking about good value plays. But look, I think that LeBron here, you look at the way that he attacked the Suns last year and look at the way that he played on opening night against the Warriors. Guys, the Lakers took 42 threes against the Warriors. They have no shooters. And well, they have some shooters, but they were hurt, right? There was no Wayne Ellington for this game. LeBron took 11 threes. And well, you know, you might say that he's not a three-point shooter. Maybe at this stage in his career, he's trying to become a three-point shooter and save his body a little bit for the stretch run. I do think that there's some upside here with all those threes because first of all, he hit a lot of them. He hit 5. But also, look, I just think that LeBron is still used as the primary option. I think there was a lot of concern about what's going to happen with Russell Westbrook. How much of the ball is he going to have? I think that it's pretty clear here that LeBron's going to get the usage in LA's offense. So I think that against the Suns last year, he was averaged 3 threes on 8 attempts. And I think that LeBron here is going to be a pretty good option. I think that he gives you a lot of 3-point upside, and he gives you a lot of usage and a lot of leverage on this slate.
Who would you build around at guard, Matty?
So again, if Embiid doesn't play, I love James Harden. The Nets would just be in such a strong spot there. But we do have another injury situation to monitor, and Bradley Beal is the other guy who we don't know if he's going to play or not tonight. So I think it's similar to Embiid, where if Beal's in, you can get him lower owned because the injury tag has been there and people might be scared off. If Beal doesn't play, we now have Spencer Dinwiddie basically taking over that offense. So it's really an either or. Like, I want to play a Wizards guard somewhere. If Beal's in, I think Beal's a great play. And if Beal's out, Dinwiddie is probably the slate's best value play. So I think you can kind of go either way there and just wait for the news to break.
Kenny, how about you, dude?
I'll take Mike Conley at $5,700. I still think it's pretty cheap considering the Sacramento Kings play zero defense, and I don't think much is going to change this year. I think that he's going a little bit overlooked on this slate. I also like Evan Fournier, a little bit more expensive, but 25% usage rate in the opening game. We know what he did with a 30-point game. I think that he's going to be relied upon a little bit more than people might have expected when he was signed. Kemba Walker was not really a big factor in the Knicks' backcourt. Derrick Rose played sparingly, and so did Emmanuel Quickley. I think that Evan Fournier is in line for another big game, a lot of minutes against his former team, the Orlando Magic. I think he could be in for a good one as well.
Hey, Nick, you building around someone with a lofty price tag?
I do like Devin Booker at 8,200, but I think you can actually save a decent amount of money and still get some borderline elite options at guard. I think LaMelo Ball at 7,700 feels like a really, really nice early season discount. That price probably rises fairly consistently as the year goes on. Granted, he's probably not hitting 7 threes in 29 minutes like he did on opening night, but he's also an all-around guy. He had 9 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals in that game. The matchup against Cleveland is obviously pretty appealing. I think Fred VanVleet is a really nice discount as well at 6,900. And then one game that I think I'm going to try to target overall in my lineups is this OKC Houston game, which it could be kind of a disaster in terms of quality of play, but I think there's a potential for a ton of points. Neither of these teams are going to be very good on defense. So I think someone like Jalen Green at 4,800 going up against OKC, he looked a little overmatched against Minnesota in the opener, but I think the Thunder are a bit more of an advantageous opponent.
All right, before we let you guys go, let's get your favorite sportsbook NBA play of the night. Kenny.
Well, I kind of tipped my hand with the LeBron James call, but I like LeBron James over 2.5 threes at +110 on the DraftKings Sportsbook. I think this is a really good price. Again, he averaged 3 makes on 8 attempts against the Suns in all the games that they played last year between the regular season and the postseason. If I have to pick a side here on the slate, I'll take the Bulls to cover -6 against the Pelicans. This is an awful team in New Orleans.
Okay, Nick.
I like both of those calls by Kenny. I'll take the Hornets to cover 2.5 at Cleveland. I am off the Cavaliers in every way possible. I'll take OKC Houston over 221. That number is down 3 points from when I last checked it last night. Jalen Green over 12.5 points, by the way, minus 130. I really like that. And I'll take the Suns +1 over the Lakers. I don't really like what I've seen from the Lakers. I don't trust that roster construction. Outside of AD and LeBron, this is a team that doesn't have a lot of options. And like Kenny alluded to earlier, still no Kendrick Nunn, no Talen Horton-Tucker, no Wayne Ellington, no Trevor Ariza. Unfortunately for the 2021 Lakers, those are all very meaningful losses.
All right, Matt, bring us home, dude. Need your best bet.
So Nick just laid this out with the Lakers and Suns, and I think it's worth mentioning the Suns are +220 for the division, and the Lakers are even money. And this game's essentially pick 'em in LA. So like odds makers think the Suns are the better team, but on the futures market, the Lakers are the better team. Like I can't imagine it's just because Trevor Ariza and a bunch of other backups are out. I think what really is true is that the Suns are actually a much better team than the Lakers this year. Russell Westbrook isn't that good. So it's not that I think that there's value on this game tonight. I think the line has actually already moved from +3.5 to +1 for the Suns. I think the value is on the futures market where the Lakers are still overwhelming favorites in the division, and the Suns should be the favorites in my mind. I just don't think this Lakers team is going to be able to sustain a really good regular season with so little depth around their two stars. And I am leaving out Russell Westbrook. I don't think he's on the same level as LeBron and AD. Might be a bold take, but the Suns are the better team. I don't think they should be +220 for the Pacific.